Welcome, everyone, to the C-Suite Sales and Marketing Perspectives podcast. I'm Steve McDonald, your host. And we have a really interesting guest here today with Andi Giri. Now, Andi is not only the CEO of Softsquare, and I'm going to allow you a little bit of time to explain what Softsquare is and what you do, but you also invest in a venture fund. You're part of that fund. You invest in early stage companies. You are a big multitasker, which I know as a CEO, you've got me. So right away, I get that. The personal side, you've run a marathon before, you have a big interest in martial arts. But what I'd love to do, Andi, is give you a chance to explain a little bit more about your background and what you do at Softsquare. And then we're going to dive right into the topic, which is how do we close the trust gap? In the B2B world, there's a lot of diminishing trust out there. And I want to talk a little bit more about that before we get into it. But I'd love to have you explain more about your background before we get started.
Okay, sure. Basically, I hail from southernmost tip of India, which is called Cape Comorin by the British, and the real name is Kanyakumari. I came to the US for my master's degree at the University of Maryland. And then I did a computer engineering degree, and then I was at the beginning of the Clinton era. 1992 is when I entered the job market. Found it hard initially, but then I adapted to the computer revolution, or at least the early job creation of, to some extent, Y2K, as well as the evolution of Unix and more desktop-oriented computing. So I was able to leverage that era to also be tuning my courses towards the most apt at that time. And then I stayed on in the DC area for about 2 years. Then took a break to start my Salesforce practice around that period. And then built a team around that and scaled to a certain extent at this point of time. And also pivoting with to AI and other areas of computing, as well as into venture capital. So it's a combination that happens every few years. You got to reinvent yourself to stay relevant. Softsquare early on used to do everything under the sun. We used to do websites, various things. And one point I realized that we are going directionless. So we've started focusing on two technologies, SAP and Salesforce. Not focusing on, I actually learned to some extent both of them, the technology side of things. And then I got into Salesforce because Salesforce was an up and coming company in 2009, about 10 years old, but they were getting popular in the SaaS arena. In fact, I was able to ride the SaaS cloud, a SaaS wave in a sense, right? The cloud and SaaS, and Salesforce was market leader and still a market leader, about 23% market share in this space. So basically, I rode that wave and took my company in that direction, which led to about 20-25 customers that we were able to engage constantly. Recurring revenue.
Fantastic. All right. Let's take all of that experience. And I'm going to ask you what I think is one of the tougher questions in the industry today. If you look at the studies that are happening, like look at the Edelman Trust Index, worldwide, it's going down like this. And it's worse in the United States than anywhere else, the decline in trust. There was also a study that came out just over a year ago, and it said that with B2B buyers, 74% of B2B buyers don't trust the customer evidence that we give to them. And that's amazing. That's how we package up what we do, right? How we create value for our clients. And that's how we demonstrate it. That's how we fill the pipeline with new people. I think it leads to, and there's a lot more studies, a lot more statistics around the decline of trust. But I think it probably is one of the bigger reasons why the B2B buyer is waiting longer and longer to talk to us. They're doing their own homework before they engage with a company like us. And then they usually have a list of the 2 or 3 they want to work with and a winner already in their mind. So trust is impacting, and the lack of trust is impacting our business in a big way. How do you think about trust? You think about your business in the B2B landscape here, right? How is trust impacting your business? But more importantly, what are you doing about it?
Okay. So basically, there are 2 things. We are a service provider around Salesforce. So what we do in a way is impacted by the trust that the community or the B2B business community has on Salesforce first, and then only we come into the picture, right? So we position Salesforce as our partner, which means our deals come only from Salesforce or Salesforce salespeople, right? Or from the Salesforce community. So we are restricted to that. And beyond that, we do services, we do products too. So our own products have an element of trust. We have competitors who have in different market segments, right? So think of perspective of Salesforce, sorry, with Salesforce in mind. So if you look at it that, the segment they operate, at least in many other parts of the world, including North America, is the growth segment, growth enterprise, right? There is Zoho's and Freshworks and HubSpot. These companies operate in the SMB space. Of course, there is some overlap, but Salesforce's branding and loyalty lies in the enterprise segment versus Oracle, Google, and other providers, and Microsoft, of course. The perception of happens when you also include the platforms with its cloud and also geography, right? If you go to the Middle East, you can see a lot of Oracle, right? Or even though not there, they are squarely building themselves for the CRM space in North America. So it also is geography based, but the amount of loyalty you can imbibe in your community versus cost, right? If you keep increasing your cost every year 10%, at some point the trust equation breaks, right? And maybe the best system, but it's getting too expensive. If you're going to bill per user per month or per user per year, and you keep on billing the hell out of us, if you don't optimize license usage, right? If you keep selling, oh, it's 10,000 this year, 20,000 the next year, it's a problem. Like, for example, in our case, we have analytics to actually measure how many users are using this month over the years. So when we go to the customer in a customer service call, we say, hey, you bought 800 licenses. Now you're using only 600. How can we help you leverage the 800? If not, you reduce your bill so that you have a more fairer deal. But it's collaborative customer success and not getting loyalty just out of the product experience and the product quality. It also relates to how much you engage with them and keep engaging with them so your loyalty is consistent and also not rip them off, right? So there's several angles to loyalty. If you have the best users, then you're covered, right? Users are not going to let the company blow the product away, but then that only runs beyond budget. The big boss writes a check. And if he says, okay, let's throw these guys out because they're too expensive, then it's a problem. So also one aspect I've seen, we went to a demo with our product and then we found that our product is not a great fit. Then we recommended our competitor and that worked in a breeze. So the customers' loyalty to us and services increased. We lost the deal for that product sale, but that's okay, right? The customer got what they wanted in a shorter amount of time to configure it than our own product. So we basically killed our own product in this customer, but our services component of our business is growing bigger because we give them the best solution rather than try to push our products down their throat.
Two big things that I'm taking away from what you're saying here. One is you just got to make the right one of the biggest ways to combat trust is to be making the right decisions all along in your own business for your customers, right? And if you do that, their loyalty to you is going to increase. And one of the that's incredible, right? Most B2B companies that I talk to, I just spoke to a gentleman and he's a chief information security officer and he just made a purchase on his tech stack. And they had an RFP and there was about 10 really important things that the platforms that they were going to bring on had to address. And he said, we looked at 14 different companies. Every single one of them said, we can do all 10. It was a sea of sameness, right? A big sea of sameness, right? Nobody came in and said, we do a really good job on these 8. These 2 we're working on right now. We're going to have a solution in about 3 months, right? Nobody told the real story. And he said it made it extremely difficult. So they had to do a lot of their own research. He said, here's the one thing I wanted to know. He says, I wanted to know what it's like to work with you after I hire you for a company that's going to make decisions like you just said there. Do the right thing for our customers. And then we're going to get rewarded, not only growing revenue internally. And I think Forrester said 73% of new annual revenue actually gets sourced from our existing clients. 73%. So what I'm taking away from your saying is do the right thing for your customers, build that loyalty. But here's the key then. How do you rewrite that? How do you communicate that to prospects when they don't even believe the customer as evidence that we present to them? How do you change the narrative to have a more authentic voice so that the message about what we do and how we treat our customers and how it works actually resonates with new prospects?
I think the best way is to bring your customer to a webinar. We have done that for our products before. For services, we have not proactively done that, but I think that's key to, because it's a genuine voice, it's an existing customer. Of course, if they can, we do publish their comments in our App Exchange listing. So appexchange.quillpost.com, and if you search for my company, Softsquare, you'll see a bunch of reviews. That's one. And so the customer saying something is much more validity than what we can put on our case studies. And so how do we connect existing customers? Okay, the salespeople that work with the customer, if they bring it, there is a little more credibility because they heard about you, right? One thing I've seen is when salespeople who sell Salesforce licenses recommend a customer, it's considered very strong because the customer wants one point of contact and they trust this person first. So they say, okay, this is the best service provider that I know, or that the AE, the account executive knows, then we get the first foot in the door to execute the project. So that kind of thing, right? So it's all about, it's not an easy game, right? To translate this to that. But, and as he said, the 73% is validly true. The more we look in, the more we educate our technical leads to understand what the customer wants and position our product and position our services properly, optimally to them, the more we get more business out of the same customer.
You have a very, when you and I talked before, you have a very customer-centric approach, right? And you talked about how having that customer-centric approach increases retention, loyalty of those customers, but it also helps in the acquisition side. Tell me about the acquisition side when you were talking about that before.
In terms of acquisition of a customer, we usually, in our practice, the existing customer's influence is not much, to be honest, right? So we position the right people in the team to the existing customer. Okay, it differs whether it's product or service. If it's product, we actually project. So let's say I have a real good example of a Texas-based equipment rental company. They came to us to buy our Media Manager product for 3,000 licenses. And then they said, hey, we need this particular feature and we don't have it, but we trust that you can build it. So the trust comes based on past reputation of the product and the reviews and things that they see on the app. So they know these guys can build it. And we're also a service provider, which means we can build it for them. So we said, okay, give us some time. We will build this feature and come back to you. So we took 1 week to do the analysis and come up with the mockups. And then another 2 weeks to deliver that in QA, the enhancement that they wanted. And the next, actually, they're doing QA and UAT right now. So we were willing to build a piece of the product for a large customer because we need to listen to the customer. That's the best form of customer success that I would recommend. So listen to your customer, include some of their important features into your roadmap as far as they fall in the product. If it's service, then don't put it in the product because it could bundle the product, right? It could ruin your 50, 100 other customers using it, and this feature could slow things down, a lot of things, right? So product building is more difficult in terms of timeline and cost. So we went ahead and built the piece, but I think we got the confidence from them because of our reviews on it. So that existing customers put their reviews, This gentleman looked at it and he was confident these guys can build it. And they also have, we have a services arm. So they had a confidence that we will go and build it with a timeline. And we got the deal. It's not signed yet, but it's almost there. Because I think they looked at past reputation. They also looked at our resilience, our interest in creating new things for them so that they will be eventually listen to each. But it's recurring. It's a $3,000 revenue per month, which is not small.
No,
So
that's not. And
it's a
that
bit.
all came from, like you said, talking to the customer, listening to the customer. Which feel like in most B2B companies, we're talking to customers, we're talking to prospects all the time in the sales funnel and through customer success. And in your mind, how important to like the overall growth, right, of your business, the sustainability of your business, how much does that depend on really talking to and understanding your customers?
Absolutely, yes. In fact, we engage with customers at Dreamforce every year. We go and meet them during that season and even otherwise, right? When I used to live abroad, it was more difficult, but now I spend a lot of time going visiting customers around the US and in Canada whenever I get a chance and when they are willing to listen to take the time to listen to it. Engaging with the customer, putting the team or equipping the team to have more oversight rather than do operational work. So the team is busy delivering, right? So I once in a while, for example, we got an opportunity from a customer for improving their development coding best practices or introducing better process tools like Rocketline is a tool we recommended to them. We are introducing some coding best practices to them. We are actually going to enforce that. So the customer is willing to, so we eventually become a trusted advisor. When we say, hey, we're not a dev swap alone. We have people who can help you with DevOps, with improving QA, with automated testing, with the coding best practices reviews by automation, not with humans. So that when you check in the code, it will immediately say, this code is not good and throw it back at you. So that kind of, right? So these are things that helps with quality and eventually less aggravation and stress and back and forth and double billing and all those things that customers don't like. I never like an escalation where customer says, point rate is too high or you have repeated entries, you are mistaken entries. That's pain. So every company goes through it. I have had those escalations also. But you have to be frank about what happens, right? So those things happen. We try our best to do those instances so that customer success is achieved. All of these put together is what's loyalty, right? Not just getting your money through the thing and bringing salary. And not everything is hunky dory forever. If you're complacent, you're going to pay a cost for that. And that's what I want.
You know, what I heard you say there is you pay very close attention to the customer experience, right? And the customer experience, you have to all throughout the life cycle of working with that customer. In fact, there was a study that came out from McKinsey a couple of years ago, and they looked at over 400 different companies, B2C and B2B companies. And one of the big conclusions was that they said the number one differentiator in the marketplace for those companies was customer experience. And when I'm thinking here and I want to ask you the question on that, basically say customer experience is one of the is the number one competitive advantage today. Because guess what? Technology, code, ChatGPT's writing code, right? If you came up with something that's phenomenal, a new feature set, it's not a long-term differentiator in the business, right? What is a long-term differentiator? We had one of the CMO that came on the podcast, and he put it this way, and I thought it was brilliant. He said, look, if I understand my customers better than my competition, I'll create an overall experience for them that's better than my competition. And I have to have products that are up to speed. Absolutely. Right. But I will win based on customer experience, based on understanding and knowing my customers better than my competition. So when you started talking about how you travel and you talk to customers all the time, I started thinking about that. When you meet with a customer, Do you ever feel like, shoot, that was a waste of time? Or do you feel I've been doing this a long time, but I'm learning every single time I talk to a customer? Is that the feeling
Most,
you get?
yeah, most is the latter. Most is the latter. Sometimes customers, I've landed in locations or cities where the customer had very rarely I've seen them less engaged, but probably maybe they had something going on in the mind, and they gave me time just because I was there, right? So in all those instances, people you can read the body language that they met you just for the heck of it. But that's more, yeah. But many customers have more than I have invited them. Some of them I have invited for opinions, and that is what I would like to exploit the most. It's not easy to to imbibe the same mindset in your employees or your colleagues, but I'm working hard on that, right? So when I get these customer success events, we have a team listen rather than me alone or the product lead alone. So we have a whole team listen to the customer to get every bit of that information, get people trained on it because that's an art and not a science.
Absolutely. So I want to give you a chance to, what haven't I asked here? Like, what's important that you want to make sure comes onto this podcast episode about addressing trust, building loyalty, building better customer experiences? What in your business do you feel like is something that you do well that you would want to share with the audience, or just something we haven't talked about yet?
Okay. So pivot. So basically, as a business, we've got to pivot at least once in 5 or 10 years, otherwise you will not exist, right? So for example, the pivots I did, initially we were doing everything under the sun. Then I figured it's not going to work for a small business or even a business that has 100 employees right now. I can't keep just doing one thing on and on. It's not going to be around. So I decided to get into chatbots and building more AI related use cases to showcase to customers that we can do these things too, right? That's one. The other one we have is I invested in a company that does vision AI. So when you can't beat them, you join. So I can't build every case under the sun. I can't do voice AI, chatbot. You can't do groundbreaking work in every area. It's impossible. So I figured, okay. So got an opportunity to invest a small chunk in a company. So I'm taking them to markets. For example, they do safety inspections on cable quality inspection, and they use camera. That's it. No LiDAR, just camera. And they have a couple of large clients in India who are using them very dependably to detect fire, to detect tripping and falling, employee lethargy, and various things, right? Cars coming in and going out of factory, all those. So I took them to Kopa and I went for a Web Summit conference. I always go to a conference to venture into a market. I went to Qatar just a month back, attended Web Summit, got about 40 leads, and then got about four strong opportunities, I would say. Opportunities is the same. Then working on yoga. And both of them are not related to CRM, which is my core business. They are related to the CFO inspection. That is what attracted the person. So our customers are the ones who are feeding us, and we got to do what customer wants. Correct? What sales was there, I don't think I would have got even a single deal in that conference. That was the one deal, one aspect that attracted attention in CRM, which was customer service. So I had the tagline on my thing said customer service or intelligent customer service. And a few booth attendees came interested in knowing what we did for customer service, and we explained our chatbot. But then the real deals that are in front of me right now, at least two of them, are in safety inspection. So I pivoted to that, not entire pivot, but a slight pivot, and leverage the other team and engage them and get that done. So what the market wants is what we can survive, not what we want, right? No matter what your customer experience, if you don't deliver what they want, that's also part of the customer experience. You're not going anywhere. So that is one that I've been doing. I also started investing in companies because that's maybe in a few years, a couple of years later, I would do an exit and then move on to venture capital and nurture other companies because as they age, you've got to use your experience further and not try to build the same thing again. So after this, I may not end up building anything. I may end up nurturing builders. That's what I'm trying. part of that is my learning through investment. And I invested in about 25 startups. And I would say a few of them will branch off to become larger companies. And I want to be part of that growth also.
So here's what I'm taking from what you're saying here is that back to this recurring theme that you're going to on listening to customers, you've got to innovate your business. You've got to innovate your products, your services based on where the direction the customer is going and their needs. And so, again, if you're not listening to your customer, you're missing really important cues. And in a way, you were listening to your customer. It wasn't about your core business. We tend to listen to customers about what we do for them and the challenges
Mm.
we do for them. They have challenges that are out to here. If we truly listen, we can find ways that we evolve and we innovate and we can grow competitive advantages that our competitors don't have, right? Because we listened and we adapted and we innovated. I think that's incredible.
And existing customers give you the partner a better opportunity. Even if you don't know the technology, you're not aware of those things, they are willing to give us more business because they already have a trust factor. So even out of the skills that they're willing to let you learn the skill set because they trust you more than someone else who may know the skill set but doesn't have the trust gap. So know your customer, listen to your customer. Customers are our breadwinners. No business will thrive without a loyal customer or a bunch of loyal customers. And what we do should serve them in an uncompromising way within our budgets, within our skill set, as far as we are honest, not give expectations and not set expectations that are not unreasonable, we will have success.
Fantastic. Thank you. Here's one thing I do know. People are going to have some questions. Would it be appropriate that I give out a link to your LinkedIn profile that people could reach out to you?
Absolutely.
Fantastic. Andy, thank you so much for coming on and sharing all of this. It keeps us thinking, and that's the mission behind this podcast, is if we get a bunch of C-suite executives together and we talk about how we grow our businesses, how we address the trends and the challenges that are coming out and attacking us and eating in our ability to do business, if we can share, that's the rising tide that lifts all boats. And you were a big part of that today. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Steve.